Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tractorman 44. You're probably wondering what it is that we're doing today. Well, we're gearing up for beef butchering. This being the first time at the new location, we don't have any hot water here. We don't want to run a garden hose, 150 feet from the house. I went ahead and brought over the big old kettle, and we're just going to go ahead and warm the water for cleaning up everything in this old kettle. Now, this old kettle has got a lot of history with my family. It's old. This is the one that we always cook the head meat in whenever we butcher hogs and everything. And like I said, hello Maggie. But at any rate, what it is just a cast iron kettle. It's roughly 48 inches in diameter. I don't have any idea of what it weighs. We will go ahead and fill this up with the water and we'll go ahead and cook our head meat down and everything. And if you notice right here, you got a little bit of a burn spot in it. We always had a big paddle, and we would go ahead and stir, and then we'd stick that paddle handle right through there and just kind of keep it in movement. My much older brother, whenever he was considerably younger, of course, got some of this old boiler material here and made this nice shroud for it to set this thing in. And then, of course, we'd burn slabs off the slab wood pile and pole wood out of the pole wood pile and stuff it in all the way across, and that's how we would heat this thing. And in no time at all, it gets up to boiling temperature. It does not take long at all. But again, this is a pretty good sized kettle. But that's all we're going to use it for, is just cleanup and everything on this particular operation. Like I say, until we get a more permanent butchering place, we're temporarily doing it this year in my son-in-law's addition onto his workshop. So we had to transport the Biro meat saw over here, of course in disassembled condition. Now we're going to have to go ahead and reassemble it and get ready, for everything else. And then of course move the butchering table in and bring the butcher knives over and everything like that, We're going to go ahead and put this thing together. It's quick and simple. It's not that difficult to put together. The blade's the worst part. Once that's on, we'll go ahead and put the idler or the upper wheel, whichever you so desire to call it. Just got a couple of little clips that set in there and hold it in place. This old Biro is from the 50s. After that idler wheel's on, the next thing you want to do is get your blade on. And we got a brand spanking new blade this year.
I usually just grab it with a heavy shirt and kind of fling it out and let it undo itself.
Well, obviously, it's always going to come reverse of what you needed. It's inside out, so he's going to go ahead and pop it around correctly. Now, Mike worked for several years in high school in a butcher shop, so he's got a little bit of experience with this.
Minimal.
There, he just popped it inside out, so now the teeth are going the correct direction. And then the way the tension adjustment works, on the back side there's a handle with a ratcheting clip built on a cam or an eccentric. And as you bear down on the handle, raise the tower and go ahead and tighten the blade to. It can be a pain in the tail end sometimes trying to get this thing on. Well, and you want to be careful with it too, because this one's a brand spanking new one. You don't want to knock the ends off of some of the teeth,
I don't want it to look like I got into a fight with a cat either.
Yep, hang on just a second. Okay, now he's got the blade on. He's ready to tension it. So you just pull down on it, and as he pulls down on it, that cam is going to raise the tower. And as it raises the tower, it'll go ahead and tighten up the blade.
And that's it.
And that's it. It's ready to rock. Well, except for the roll table and things like that. After the wheel, the actual table, it's a roller top table. Pretty much everything is stainless steel and in neoprene. Really fairly easy to put together. They make them like that so it's easy to take apart and clean up. Because if it wasn't easy, the guys would be a little bit lax in the cleanup department, Alright, with that portion of the fixed table on, it's time for the roller top. You can actually see the rollers, they're bearing rollers underneath. They're all stainless steel. And of course the neoprene slide there that it's going to.
Put that up.
There's your stop. Yep. You just flip the stop to where whenever you roll it backwards to make the next cut, it doesn't run off the track. So there's the assembled. All you got to do is install the door and close the door. Like I said earlier, this thing has seen a little bit of abuse. I believe that door casting has a couple of cracks and breaks in it. The only time you have to open that up is when you force it into a bone, maybe a little bit crooked, and knock the blade off the track, or pull backwards and the bone catches the back of the blade and causes it to run off the track. And of course the bottom door covering the motor compartment. This was a single-phase machine. I was working at a building next door to this years ago when to the company that actually refurbished and sold these old machines. I was doing air conditioning work in the building next door and happened to notice these guys, so lunchtime I went over and talked to them and made a deal and bought this. This was originally a three-phase machine, and I went ahead and changed it over to a single-phase motor and a single-phase motor controller. So now we got to wire in the motor controller. Now Gator from Gator's World and Mike from Grampy's Workshop, they're both retired electricians. They'll probably just jump all over me for all this. But we got a 240 volt contactor. It's got a 110 volt coil, and we went ahead and wired that in. And of course I got to put this front cover on here. Of course we had to match the heaters. There's overloads inside here. They're heaters that once you over amp, it'll go ahead and shut off on safety. It'll shut off the control circuit and then let the contactor fall out, protecting everything. So all we got to do is do a quick test on this. I've already checked the voltage. We've got 243 volts, I think it is. Might go ahead and hit that switch. Well, looks like everything's going to work, so as long as it works for the next weekend, we'll be in good shape. Now, I don't know how many years ago it was whenever we quit killing and scalding hogs ourselves, but it's been a while back, simply because we found a guy out in the country that would kill them. He would scald them, scrape them, gut them, have them, and hang them overnight in the cooler for $6 a head. At that point, it just got to where it wasn't worth it for us doing 5 or 6 hogs at $6 a head to do them anymore because of the aggravation that it becomes. Our scalding vat was a big old long, 8-foot long vat, and we fired it with sawmill slabs and everything too, you know, with the smoke pipe coming out of the back end just like the kettle. And of course that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to set up and do. Like I said, if you're doing 15 or 20 hogs, that's a little bit different, but 5 or 6 hogs, it just wasn't that big a deal. So this has been in storage since that time, and I'm trying to think of when it was, probably the mid-80s or so. But this has been in storage in one of my much older brother's barns. And of course there's a lot of dust and stuff on it, but don't worry about that. We'll dust all that off when we fill it up. But this is just a nice homemade lid that the old man made, my God, back in the 40s probably. And of course it comes off. But the old kettle has seen a lot of activity. There's absolutely no doubt. And then of course to cover it back up, this old kettle set for years and years right outside the wood shed on the old home place. But this is the original cover, you know, from the time before I was a kid. That's how long this thing's been in use out on the place. Now, the old man, or my grandfather, got some World War II cooking utensils, and that's what we used a lot, you know, for skimming. Great big old sieves and everything with big long handles and stuff, and big old pots and everything, you know, stuff they'd serve, you know, the military with, you know, in the big mess halls and all that. And that's what we had, and my much older brother still has those utensils over at his place. But that's what we would use to skim out the head meat, you know, and go ahead and process the head meat, pull it out, let it cool, clean all the meat and stuff off the bones and everything, you know. But that's, like I said, that's all World War II vintage tools and equipment that we use. Well, tomorrow being butcher day, I'm up here at the son-in-law's house. We're kind of setting up everything, you know, getting the saw and the butchering table and knives and everything lined out, getting ready. I'll just give you a quick look around and let you see what the final preparation looks like. So we got the old butcher table, you know, that my older brother put the plywood top on, got rid of the old sawmill boards and stuff, you know, that was put on back when it was built back in the 30s or 40s or whatever. But we got the butchering table here, and of course we got a complement of the different knives. We got a handsaw here, and of course the sharpening steels. We got a ceramic steel, you know, for the stainless steel knives and things like that. And of course different types of trimming knives and boning knives and stuff, you know, right on down the line. And this isn't all of them. This is just all we're going to use, you know, tomorrow. We got the Hobart meat grinder on the end. We've got the meat tenderizer over there. And of course you saw us bringing the saw in and assembling the saw the other day. And you can see a complement of cutting boards that he's got there. Different types of hardwood. Some of them's hard maple and some of them's walnut. There's some cherry and stuff in there, you know. But those will be the butchering boards. And you can see off to the side over there is going to be the packaging table. That's got the vacuum seal. This is just a sampling of the cutting boards that the son-in-law makes. These are all that he made here, you know, out of just scrap material right off the sawmill and off of other woodworking projects and stuff. Just a variety of wood. I forgot what number that is, but that's from Cabela's. That's a CG. They call it a CG for commercial grade. I don't know if that's true or not, but it does a very good job. But that'll be our vacuum sealer right there in front of the lathe. And then looking closer at the Hobart power head on the meat grinder, it's a mismatch of 3 different machines that I was able to patch together and make work. And of course the bucket right there on the end, sitting on the electrical spool, that'll just catch the hamburger coming right out of the grindings right out of the end of the grinder. And of course this is the closer view of the tenderizer. Like I say, we got the electric meat saw over there, but there's always a couple of cuts that you have to always finish by hand, so you got to have a hand saw along with it. Sometimes there's a need, you know, to use the cleaver. We don't use it very often. Sometimes there's a little tip of a bone you don't want to have to run around and run through. You just go ahead and put on the block of wood and hit it with the cleaver and knock that off of there. And of course there's a wide variety of homemade knives that my dad had made for me years ago, and of course a couple of them for himself. He would have made this one for me back in the 70s or thereabouts. Pretty good compliment. That there's a store-bought knife. This is one of his old ones that he had made back in the 50s. Of course, that's for cutting the big roasts and the big steaks. And this is another one of his very good knife. This is one of his favorites for cutting the big, large steaks. We used to process all the meat by hand, no type of saws at all. So some of those big old steaks and roasts you'd have to cut off all the way around down to the bone, then hand saw them through the bone, then cut the rest of the way. And that's the reason why you wanted those big, long knives to reach through there. Of course, this is a Foster Brothers knife. That's a store-bought knife, and on down the line. There's some good quality stainless steel. Some of them are quite flexible. You want a nice boning knife, or a nice trimming knife to be flexible. You want a boning knife to be nice and almost like a fillet knife, where you can just get in around and cut around those. This here has turned into one of my favorites. It's a made in Portugal knife. It's got an excellent good material. It's got enough flexibility. It's small enough to do everything I need, and it's one of my favorite knives. And of course I did a video on when my son-in-law and myself made 2 of these with the same style blade but different handles a year before last or so, and I kind of like that for a little bit of trimming as well. And of course you can't do any of the sharpening without your stone. The stone combined with the steel, and then of course the ceramic steel for the stainless steel blades. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to have the time to record tomorrow, but whenever there comes some nicer cuts and everything, I'll definitely take the time to show y'all some of the nicer cuts. Show you a little bit of the grinding process and the packaging process, you know, of the hamburger, and also of the way we vacuum seal over here, and of course our butcher boxes that we actually put the packages in for going back in the cooler or in our own freezers. So we're ready for the quarters, and so tomorrow morning we'll get our early start. So if this happens to be the end of the video, this is Trackman 44, and I'm out of here, guys.